So if you have a great idea, how do you break it up? How do you figure out that it's going to be an idea that will work or that it's going anywhere?
See, I think one common problem is that everybody thinks or feels that the idea that they have and that they're playing with is important and can possibly change the world. It can possibly have a lot of impact. But the challenge remains that without execution, an idea remains worthless. So if you want people to take you seriously, you have to do a couple of things. The first thing you have to do is you have to show commitment, that you believe in this idea as much as anybody else, but possibly a lot more, right? So if somebody comes to me and says, look, I have this great idea, and for the last 3 years I've worked on it, and I've gotten to this stage, and I've sort of spent nights at it, I've forsaken vacation time, I've spent every excess hour I had other than feeding myself, and I put that into it, then and look how far I've brought it. That shows an enormous amount of commitment. But you come to me and say that, look, I have a great idea, and I'm willing to take it further if you write me a check. Then the conversation is going to stop there. So the first thing you have to do is show commitment with the idea. Now, how do you show commitment? You show commitment by determining a roadmap to, I think, what possibly the best choice is credibility. So you build a roadmap to credibility. Now, how do you build a roadmap to credibility? First step is the idea that you're working with. Is it viable? Is it functional? So what are the questions that need to be answered to prove that this idea is viable and functional? And in most cases, that basically means that you have a handful of assumptions that I need A, B, C plus D to make it work. So can you get A plus B plus C and D? And you say, okay, I think I need A plus B plus C plus D to make it work. When you have these 4, does it work? Or you still have a missing element that needs to be added, right? Then if you think that if I put it together in this shape and form, this is the end result that will come out, is this what comes out? So this is one part. The second part is to find people who are willing to work with it, because it alleviates or addresses a certain pain as far as their needs are concerned. Now within this category, when I speak to you or I suggest a concept, you can tell me, Jawwad, this is a great idea because you're a friend of mine. You don't want to break my heart and tell you, this is the stupidest thing I've heard. Or you can say, okay, this is a great idea, I'll give it a shot, but don't ask me to pay for it. Or you'll say, look, this is a great idea. I've been looking for something like this for the last 10 years of my life. And if you can make it work, I'll write you a check for $10,000. Right? So the second part of credibility is to get these type C customers. People will say, I've been looking for this for the last 10 years. If you can solve this for me, I'll write you a check for $10,000. So find these customers. And finding these customers generally is not as simple as it sounds, because you start off with a concept, you present it to an individual, the individual comes back and says, this is alright, but what would really make it work is if you could do X. And when you add X, if you take it to me, this looks brilliant, but to make me pay for it, it would be nice if you add Y. And you add Y, you go back and says, okay, now add Z. So you go back 7, 8, 9 times till you each get to a point where your product concept and the pain need fit, meets and matches. Okay, and that's where a transaction will happen, right? So you need to get it to that stage. Now, admittedly, there are concepts and products for which you cannot do this without putting in an enormous amount of cash and money and collateral, right? So tell me that I have a brilliant concept for refining crude oil, and to make this work, I need access to a refinery. You and I can't do this. Somebody else has to do. Who has access to a refinery has access to cash. You tell me I have a great idea that requires me to work with 10 million people. So when I have those 10 million people in my network, a certain network effect will show that will be enormous. So you and I again can't do this. But what we can do is we can make this concept or this idea or this product work for one person, and then work for one person who's willing to pay for it, and then work for 2 people who are willing to pay for it, and then grow it step by step, piece by piece. So now your product doesn't need to be fully developed, doesn't need to be complete, right? Sometimes even a blueprint that has been well thought out is enough for a sale to occur. Okay. And we've seen numerous instances of those. We discuss a concept or a thought. The person who's presenting the concept, is in the same room with the person who's looking for something similar. He says, okay, I'll put X down right now for you to get to a certain stage. So those deals happen all the time. But they only happen when you have the commitment and when you've thought this process through. So if you have a great idea that you want to take it further, you have to first write your own roadmap to credibility that needs to end with a customer who's willing to pay cash for it. Okay. And once you get to this stage, a large number of questions that prospective investors or partners or players or even future customers will ask will get answered.
And supposing the project or the product was not viable anyway, should you look at this as an opportunity to create a prototype that fails and fails quickly so that you can get on to the next product?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the gentleman who runs Ego, what's his name? Musaji, Adil Musaji. So Adil Musaji said this at an Icon event, and this was a brilliant analogy. He said, look, when you cook food, there are elements in the recipes that tend to get mixed together. So the amount of salt, yogurt, meat, beef, seasoning, so on and so forth, how you cook, how much you don't cook, and so on and so forth. All of these are variables. And to get to a perfect meal, you have to experiment a number of times. The same thing happens with the business and the product. You can build a product and shut it down, and it can teach you something, and then build it again and shut it down and teach you something more. And you carry on repeating this exercise till you get to a point where you find a customer who's willing to put money down. And it doesn't matter whether it's $1 or $2 or $10. Customer paying revenue is customer paying revenue. It tells you that the initial thought that you had about your concept being viable by addressing a specific and given need, if that one element gets validated, your pitch and your conversation is very, very different.
Right.